Hello, Steve, Canadian Sasquatch, coming at you with another Mead Monday. That's right, we're doing it again. This has probably been the longest running series I've ever done in a row like this. And it's because you guys keep giving me really good questions. This week's question is a doozy. I had to research it. But before we do that, let's get into a bottle of mead. We're going back to Meridian Hive, Huajilla Traditional Huajilla honey. I'm excited about this because a lot of the meads I make with Huajilla honey. It's a native South Texas plant, and I can get a lot of that honey for fairly reasonable price. So that's what I make a lot of my meads with. So I'm excited to try a professional mead with it. We have a 13.2% ABV. It is a semi-sweet. It is a traditional. From humble beginnings as a wild and brushy Texas shrub, this elegant Huajilla honey traditional mead delivers a complex mix of lemon, slate, and warm spices that develop into soft floral characters with a rich yet well-rounded and mellow finish. So yeah, from Meridian Hive over there in Austin, Texas. Their labels are always really good. They let you know what's in there. I really like the fact that on the back there, it tells you right off the bat what kind of sweetness you have. It's a fun bottle. It's a 500 milliliter bottle. I've not seen these before until this showed up. So through the magic of video, it's going to be open. It is now open. So let's, well, we can tell right away because you can see right through the bottle that it's going to be clear. It is amazingly clear. It is a nice pale straw color. Oh man, I get the aromas already off of it. That is an absolutely gorgeous color right there. Let's go ahead and get some aroma since I'm already smelling it. Oh yeah, I can definitely get the Huajilla from this. So it does have a fairly distinct aroma to it. And it smells pretty much just like mine does. So that's a good sign right there. You can get a little bit of the sweetness on it. I'm getting no off flavors whatsoever, or off aromas, I guess. Yeah, just the distinct Huajilla aroma, the sweetness, the aroma of please drink me, so I think I will. Cheers, everybody. Thank you for joining me on this Mead Monday. So there is a slight carbonation to it. Just very slight, just a little bit of the tingly on the tongue, or under the tongue rather, from that. But it does have that Huajilla flavor. That nice semi-sweetness is in there. It's probably I'd say it's light-bodied. It does coat the glass, not too bad, but it does have a light medium body to it. There's There's also a slight sharpness. I'm not quite sure what that is. Not a sharpness and astringency to it, but it's it's the drink me astringency. I call it that because what it does is, as you drink, you get that astringency in your mouth, which dries it out just slightly. So you want to take another sip because it tastes so good. And while your mouth is slightly dry, so you need to wet it again, so you need to take a sip. But yeah, that's a nice light flavor. It is a very pleasant mead. I'm even going to say it's better than my own Huajilla Traditional. Yep, I'm going to say it's better than my own. The Meridian Hives did really well with this. I'm happy with this for sure. So yeah, between the label and the bottle, the aromas we have going on here, the flavor, the overall impression. How do I rate this? I give it the old Sasquatch thumbs up. So well done, Meridian Hive. Well done indeed. That's the Huajilla Traditional. Just a great mead all around. And with that, let's get into your guys' question. It's, as I mentioned, it's a doozy this week. I had to do some research, so I got notes. So in the last couple of weeks, a couple of you have asked me about potassium sorbate and off flavors. Right off the bat, personally, I have never had any off flavors that I know of in my meads when I've used potassium sorbate. And I'm drinking meads that I used potassium sorbate in 2013. So we're starting to push 5 years on those meads, and I haven't noticed any issues with them yet. And throughout all this time, it's like I didn't know or didn't remember knowing anything about potassium sorbates giving off any kinds of flavors. And a couple of you have talked about celery and pineapple or geranium off flavors and aromas from the potassium sorbate. So I went and did some research on this for you guys so we can settle this down once and for all right here. So what causes the off flavors with sorbate is when you mix potassium sorbate in a malolacto fermentation. So the sorbate with the malolactic acids, the malic acids, will combine and they cause the geranium off flavors and aromas, which can also be the celery or the pineapple. You quite often see this more so in grapes because they have a little bit higher malic acid content in them versus other fruits. But all fruits and vegetables have the malic acid in them. And if you're wondering what malic acid is, take a bite out of an unripe apple and that sour tart that makes you go, that is malic acid. So, and what the malic acid fermentation does is it turns the malic acid into lactic acid, which is a much smoother and pleasant acid. The best example that I can think of and saw during my research is with a buttery Chardonnay. It's that buttery flavor or feel. That's the lactic acid. Tongue twisters. So as fruit ripens, though, it loses some of that malic acid because it's part of the process. It gets changed into sugars and all that stuff. I'm not going to go into that because that's way over my head on that process. I don't really care about that process. All I care about is the riper the fruit, the less malic acid there is, which means there's a less chance in the riper fruit to combine with the sorbates to cause the off flavors that you guys have been asking about. So we still need to stabilize our meads. We can still do it safely with the potassium sorbate. We just need to time it correctly to avoid it causing the off flavors from the malolactic fermentation. So we need to stop the malolactic fermentation using potassium metabisulfites. So we'll hit the mead with the potassium metabisulfites, and then we'll wait about 24 hours to let it do its thing. And then to finish off the stabilization, we hit it with the potassium sorbate. Now at this point, there shouldn't be any more of any kind of fermentation going on. So the sorbate is now safe to add to the mead because there's no malolactic fermentation going on. So we won't get those off flavors that the malic acid and the sorbate would normally get. That is something interesting that I've learned through this research because I've always added the potassium metabisulfite and the potassium sorbate at the same time. And I guess I've just lucked out that I haven't had any malic fermentations going on. So I haven't gotten any of the off flavors from the combination of the sorbate and the malolactic fermentation. That is a hard word to keep repeating over and over. So you want to potassium metabisulfite first, wait 24 hours, and then potassium sorbate to finish off the stabilization. And you need both of them because one kills off everything, and the other one makes sure everything cannot reproduce, just in case they weren't fully killed off at that point. And then, as I mentioned, another thing that we can do is make sure we're using really ripe fruit, because the riper the fruit, the less malic acid is in there, except for grapes, because the malic acid is actually in the peel of the grape. So that's a whole other thing, and that's winemaking and all that. But if you're going to make a pint, then this is something that you need to think about as well. So just really ripe fruit, and then again stabilize using the metabisulfites and the sorbates using with the time difference and all that. Okay, but what if we want to avoid chemicals altogether when we're doing this? We don't want to have any worry whatsoever with the sorbates, metabisulfites, or any of that. One thing we can do is you can get filters to be able to filter the mead, which will filter out all of the yeast, the bacteria, whatever's in there, strip them all out so you don't have any of that worries whatsoever. That costs a bit more money because you gotta get the filter, you gotta get a pump to be able to filter that, because if you're filtering at that fine of a level, it's not just gonna drip through, you're gonna have to push it through or pull it through, however the pumping part works. But yeah, so you can filter it. Another way is to step feed the honey. So if you want to make a sweet mead, this is how you would do it. You would set up your mead for whatever you want to do, and then you just let it ferment all the way down as far as it will go. And then you will add honey back up to the sweetness level that you want. So if you want a mead that's at a 10, 15 or something like that, you let it ferment down, and then say it's like a 1009, so you want to add honey back up to where the gravity reading is 1015. And you just keep doing that until after like 3, 4, 5 weeks, the gravity does not change at all. And it stays at that 10-15. At that point, you know the yeast are completely done and there's nothing else that they can do to that, at which point it is stabilized. You still have to make sure, like when you're bottling, that your bottles are sanitized really well, because there might be something in the bottles that can do a little bit more to that sweet mead at that point. But it is a good way to do it. I've done it that way. It takes a little bit more effort, but it works well, and you get a nice sweet mead without having to use chemicals to stabilize and then back sweeten at that point. The other thing you can do is you could just make a super dry mead. Once the mead is fermented all the way completely done, well, it's completely done and there's no more fermenting going on, so you can go ahead and bottle and it's done, just like that. So if you like super dry wines, meads and that, then you don't have to worry about anything. You just let it ferment and be done. So yeah, so that was a great question that you guys sent in, asking about the off flavors with the potassium sorbate. I mean, I had to go out and do some research, and because of that research, I'm going to be changing how I do my processes now to make sure I don't get any off flavors. Like I said, I haven't had any yet, but up to this point, I think it's been luck that I haven't had any. So I will be changing my things up, because normally I do the potassium metabisulfite and potassium sorbate at the same time. Now I'm going to do the potassium metabisulfate, wait 24 hours, and then do the potassium sorbate to stabilize things. And the other part of all that is, well, my editor's not going to like it, but I actually have to change things in my book now because of this particular little tidbit. So, and we were so close to being done with all the edits, but the book will be better because of it. So thank you guys for your questions. Great stuff. And with that, we are done. This Mead Monday is done. This was a fantastic mead from Meridian Hive. If you guys can find yourself some Meridian Hive Huajilla, so far any of their meads have been fantastic. They're the ones that do the canned honey. They're the ones that do the canned meads as well, which fantastic. So guys, if you've enjoyed this, learned anything, please hit that like button down there, the thumbs up. I'd appreciate it. It gives me warm fuzzies. Subscribe if you haven't subscribed already. Comment down below. Let's get some communication going back and forth between me and you guys. More questions. I still have some questions. Today's was a big one, so I just kind of left it at its own, but I do have 1 or 2 questions left, so I do need your guys' questions. Give me a backlog of questions so I don't have to worry about what am I going to talk about next week. So down below, questions in the comments, or hit me up on Twitter or Facebook or any of those social media things. And with that, my friends, be sure to have a pint of awesome, because I know I will. Cheers, everybody. Bonus footage. That's right. We have my 2013 Huajilla Traditional. We're going to side by side with the Meridian Hive Huajilla Traditional. I can already tell you I lost. Simply because looking in the bottle, there's floaties. But let's do it. So I started making mead in the fall of 2012. So this is one of the very beginning meads that I made. So yeah, it's cloudy, but I was still learning at that time. So I'm not too upset about that. And only within the last year and a half have I really started to try and make my meads as clear as possible and all that, just to bring them up to this kind of notch. So let's go ahead and get, so it's darker, and it's more yellow than straw. So we have the Meridian Hive here. We've got the Canadian Sasquatch here. So light yellow straw, light golden yellow. Let's go ahead and do an aroma. Okay. I'm actually not getting much aroma on it. Get a little bit of fusel. Maybe a little bit of caramel. So let's give it a taste. So I do get fusels, but it's not that bad. It's still drinkable. It's very, very thin. It's on the drier side. So I would say, using the Meridian Hive scale there, I would say off dry, which is right there, second from the bottom, off dry. That's where I would place this. I do get a little bit of that Huajilla flavor though, so it's not too bad. Yeah, that's much, so the Meridian Hive one is much smoother, a lot more of the Huajilla flavor, a little bit on the sweeter side, which I prefer. Not a fan of dry. Again, this was me when I was just starting out learning how to do stuff. Probably my 6th or so batch in, maybe. It's not bad. It's not great. It's drinkable. The other part of it is I did use cheap corks on there. So they're the corks that have been chewed up and combined with some glue and whatnot. So cheap, so they're not meant for aging for more than 1 or 2 years. And here it is almost 5 years later. And you can see how far it's sunk in, because I do keep it on its side for the most part. Now the Meridian Hive, so this was the side that was in the cork, and their corks are super awesome. Trying to get you in focus here. There we go. So yeah, this Meridian Hive is just classic all the way through. I would definitely prefer drinking their Huajilla mead over mine at this point. So cheers to you guys. Once again, it's Canadian Sasquatch Meadery, Huajilla 2013. Meridian Hive, Huajilla. It doesn't have a date on the bottle. I just noticed that. No dates on the bottle. That would be a nice thing, Meridian Hive. Date on the bottle, please. So with that, my friends, we really are done. Be sure to have pints of awesome. I know I will. Cheers, everybody. That is just so good.